Hey everybody, welcome to Prime Cuts with Captain Beefy. I'm Captain Beefy, and we're going to talk about quite the year so far. Here we are, it's February 2nd, 2019, and it's been a tumultuous year as far as politics and sociology go in this great nation of ours, the United States of America. We're 2 years away from the 2020 election, and we've already got several people that have announced their candidacy so far. It started with Christian Gillibrand. I think she was at the end of December, maybe the beginning of January, when she stated that she was going to run on the Democratic side, of course. She's kind of like Hillary Clinton without the murderous past and crime history, and just another boring, old school Democratic candidate. After that, we had Kamala Harris heed the call too to run for office. Um, Out of California, she fits the intersectional bill quite nicely because she not only is a woman, but she's also a woman of color, claiming African American heritage, even though her parents are Jamaican and Indian, if I'm not mistaken. So, while brown, she's not quite African American, but who's counting right there? After that, we had Cory Booker, or no, actually, I think, yeah, well, on the Democratic side, Cory Booker also announced out of senator out of New Jersey. Here's a guy that was accused of, I believe it was sexual assault in a men's room against another man. Um, he also fits somewhat of the intersectional bill, being that he is a person of color or African American. Not too dark, of course, just like Obama, nice and light skinned, of course, because that's what the Democratic Party sees as being, I guess, less risky to put up there. God forbid they run Wesley Snipes, right? I mean, she's it's almost ridiculous watching these guys, um, go to work on who they're gonna get up there on the pulpit to run. So we've got these three running so far. Oh, and of course, Elizabeth Warren, or Pocahontas, our 1024th Native American, is running. So, Lord Almighty, it's going to be a 2 year freaking 2 years of campaigning, and I follow all these idiots on Twitter just so I can keep up with them. And let me tell you something, it's tiring and frustrating. And then recently we just had Howard Schultz talk about the former CEO of Starbucks talk about running. Not as a Democrat, but on an independent ticket. And this has the Democrats up in arms. They're freaking out because they know that their party has drifted so far left that if Schultz runs, he is going to siphon off quite a number of votes away from the Democratic Party, which will more than likely ensure Trump will win. Now, Trump is not without his detractors, even within his own party and even within his own fan base. His handling of the government shutdown regarding building the wall has frustrated quite a few people, myself included. But I'm not angry with him, and I don't think he made the wrong decision by reopening the government and putting it back in Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer's hands. He did the right thing, I believe, because these people needed to get paid. It was 31, 32, 33 days they went without work and without paycheck. That's rough. Not too many Americans can handle that without going into debt or serious trouble, not being able to put food on the table, pay a light bill, whatever. I mean, it's rough. So I felt for those people. I felt like it was unfair that they had to go without pay for so long. But I don't put that blame on Trump. Trump laid it squarely on the table. Ahead of time, he said, I'm going to shut down the government if you do not negotiate with me. He did not say, I'm going to shut down the government unless you build me a wall. He said negotiate. And Pelosi said no. Called his bluff, and he shut down the government. So those two have been going at it back and forth. She wants to cancel the State of the Union address and blah, blah, blah. They're just going back and forth. It's really ridiculous at this point. She's going to lose this fight, I guarantee it. The ball's back in her court, and he said, I'm going to shut it down again in 3 weeks if you don't negotiate. And she's already saying, well, there's not going to be any money for the wall. So guess what, Nancy? It's going to shut down again. And if you try to shift the blame again to Trump, you're only going to look worse than you did the first time. It's brutal out there. We had more attacks on conservatism in January than I've ever seen in such a short period of time. Um, from the silly Gillette ad, the is this the best that man can get, where it attacked pretty much every part of what they consider toxic masculinity, which is pretty much just being a guy, cooking on the grill, wrestling as a kid with the other kids. I mean, it's just silly, stupid, pandering garbage from an Australian director that feminist that God. I saw some of her other work. It was just ridiculous. I mean, really ridiculous stuff. And then there's a big public outcry over Gillette and all that. We made fun of it over on Powers podcast. I mean, it was insulting. It didn't make me angry, but it insulted me. I'm like, you guys sell razor blades to guys like me, men. Men that need to shave. Obviously, I don't use it as often, but as some guys, but men shave on a constant basis, and you just alienated most of your clientele and called them toxic and just the best you can get. Why not show a commercial showing the fireman rescuing somebody, or the police officer, or the soldier coming home from overseas, being greeted by his family, and her touching his, like the old shaving commercial with the guy in the mirror, and he's like, afterward. Those are great commercials, man. They advertised. They showed you all 5 blades on the thing and the little lubricating strip and all that. Now we've got this freaking social commentary that's just despicable and stupid. But that was that. But the attacks got worse. So in January, there were several events that happened that people just took a hold of, ran with, and went nuts over. And there were attacks that. Well, let's go over the first one. Let's look at there was a little girl, I believe it was in Texas, by the name of Jasmine Barnes, who was shot in the car. I think she was in the back seat of the car or whatever, with her mother in the car with her, young black girl, 4 years old, something like that, child. And a tragic event. Somebody saw a man driving away from the scene in a red truck, a white man. They gave a description, and people ran with it, saying that this is the killer. And then apparently they figured out who this man was in the truck and revealed his information. And Sean King, of Black Lives Matter, we all, if you don't know that guy, you got to look him up. He's a real class act. But he's offering a reward to find him, calling him a racist POS and blah, blah, blah. Well, it turns out this girl was killed in a drive-by shooting by 2 young black men. And this guy was just leaving the scene because he was scared for his life. He could have been, hurt or killed over these accusations, and they had absolutely no bearing. They were totally inaccurate. Then we had another event, a week and a half later, where these students from a high school, Covington High School, a Catholic high school, went to the March for Life event in Washington. And a still picture, was shown on the internet of one of the boys with a MAGA hat on, a Make America Great Again hat on, facing an American Indian who had a drum in his hand. And the boy had a kind of an uncomfortable, smirky smile on his face. Everybody said it was a smirk. And, the narrative that was wove from the single picture was that he was standing in this guy's way, blocking him from moving forward, and smirking at him like, ha, ha, ha. Then they showed like a 10-second clip, and they show some of the boys doing the arm chop like you see at FSU games and all, because the guy's playing the drum and all that. They were doing school chants ahead of time. The man came up with the drum, got right into the guy's face, and everybody's, at first it looked like, oh, he's just joining in and they're all having fun, but then the whole story came out. And like an hour and 49-minute video was released. And I watched this video more than once, and the situation was much larger and much different than the one that the mainstream media wove, and the one that everybody jumped onto and started calling. I saw things on Twitter where they're calling to beat these kids up, dox them, get their information out there. They should be ashamed of themselves. Is there a more punchable face than that guy with the smirk? One guy's offering signed, autographed albums to anybody who punches the guys in the nuts until and sends him a video. One guy did a cartoon of them being thrown in a wood chipper hat first. I mean, it was insane, utterly insane, and I don't understand this mentality that people get over stuff like this. You cannot take a single picture or a 10-second video clip and determine what's going on. You just can't. It's impossible. So I watched this hour and 49-minute video, and then it turns out there's these black Israelites there, and they're calling out horrible things to the kids. You know, these guys are they're the Westboro Baptist Church of the black community. They're insane. They don't know what they're doing. They claim that everybody, every great invention, every great person in history was black. King George was black. Shakespeare, you know, totally out there. You know, I understand you want to take pride in yourself, pride in your people. That's great. Everybody should be able to do that. But you know, don't make things up. I mean, come on, man. You know, just you have some great achievements. Stick with those. You know. So anyway, these guys are instigating the kids on, and I guess the kids started doing some school chants and all that to kind of maybe drown them out and whatnot. And then Nathan Phillips, the American Indian, who was also apparently a Vietnam vet, but he wasn't. Anyway, we digress there. He marches up to these kids, and he's got another guy with him, and the other guy's calling him stuff like European colonists, and you're on stolen land, and blah, blah, blah. And while the kid is smiling at first, when the guy comes up, he's like, well, after a few seconds of him in his face, his smile kind of goes to this weird look. And, you know, we were all kids at one time. If I was a 16-year-old kid and this old man came up to me, I was taught, you know, you respect your elders and all that. If he came up to me in my face like that, I'd be uncomfortable. And I wouldn't push him, or I wouldn't, fight him or anything. But I'd be like, whoa, and I probably would have a similar expression that, like, what's going on here, kind of. Not quite a smirk, not quite a smile, a little confusion, maybe a little fear. So, in any case, it was just a totally ridiculous, blown out of proportion situation that was insane. Now, Twitter has rules that you can't put hate speech on their page, or what they consider hate speech. And these people that called for these guys to be punched or beaten or thrown in wood chippers and all that, none of them were suspended or admonished in any way. It was all good. It was all good. Now, if it had been the other way around, if we had talked about, well, that Indian should be thrown back on the reservation, or whatever other things that people could have said, you probably would have gotten suspended. And that's a shame that there's no fairness in those rules. But hey, they make the rules. It's their website. We got to play by them, right? So in any case, this American Indian elder, Vietnam vet and all that turned out to be pretty much a complete and total fraud. First off, he did serve in the Marines during the time that Vietnam was going on, but he got in like toward the tail end of it. He never went overseas, never went to Nam, and I think he worked on refrigerators or something. There was some talk about some arrest history and all that. I think it was minor stuff. It was, this is where, you want to pick somebody apart and, oh, they had a DUI, or, oh, they got drunk in a bar fight. Whatever, man. I mean, that's, anybody can get involved in anything stupid at any time. It's not like he had a string of robberies or domestic, just whatever. So, a lot of people are into with egg on their face. And I'm not talking about just personalities like news people. I'm talking about, Congress people and, politicians, prominent people talking some nasty stuff about these guys. And it was just utterly, utterly ridiculous. So, the story's not even done. And then we have this Jesse Smollett, this actor from the Fox TV show Empire. I think it was last Sunday, a week ago tomorrow, that he was in Chicago at 2 a.m, according to his story. And he was jumped by two men who beat him up, tied a rope around his neck, poured bleach on him, and yelled, "This is MAGA country." That's a horrible, horrible thing. That's a horrible story. And it really fits the narrative of what the media and the mainstream media and the Democratic Party is trying to push, that Trump supporters are racist animals that are out there to hurt people and commit hate crimes. Well, the police, okay, so it's Chicago, and it's like freezing cold at 2 a.m. Here's an actor, like, I'm a film guy. I mean, look behind me. I have hundreds of movies and television shows. I love this. This is my media. This is one of my fun things I do to, like, get away from all this other garbage. And I didn't know who this actor was. So, he's not Denzel Washington. He's not Samuel Jackson. He's some minor player on a TV show on Fox. What do you friggin' do? I don't think anybody really knows who you are outside of the fan base of that show. And being that the show is, I believe it's about the black entertainment industry, it's probably not the kind of show that's going to appeal to MAGA country fans. So, it is what it is. So, anyways, the story, when I first heard the story, I had to laugh. I said, this is like the biggest load of crap I've heard ever. Ever. And it turns out that the police reviewed hundreds of hours of surveillance, and I've done a little research on there, watched some other videos. That area has a lot of buildings and all that with surveillance cameras outside of them and all that to see what's going on. And nobody saw any attack. Nobody saw anything like that. And he never mentioned the whole "this is MAGA country" when he first made his report 45 minutes after the attack. It wasn't until TMZ reported this that and said the MAGA country part that he remembered hearing it, and then his agent or manager, or friend or somebody, said that yeah, they were on the phone with him and they heard it. But Jesse will never turn his phone over to the police so they can look through it, maybe verify his story. So there was no surveillance cameras, no corroboration. I mean, no giving up of your phone to provide some evidence to support your story. And and who's walking around at 2 a.m. in Chicago with a gallon of bleach that would have probably frozen and a hunk of rope, hoping to catch some B-rated actor off of a television show to teach him a lesson, And I saw the picture of him too. He's like in the hospital. He's got lips a little puffed up. He's got a little scratch. It looked like I've done worse shaving, But it's pathetic. There's a million things that could have happened, and we don't know. Yeah, a million things. And I guarantee you, something happened that was pretty freaking embarrassing to him. And instead of owning up to that and saying, "Well, I was out and I was trying to buy drugs. I tried to hook up with some dude at the club and his boyfriend was there and he rolled me," whatever, I mean, we don't know what happened because he is a. Oh, and they also yelled racial and homophobic remarks at him as they were beating him up. Apparently, now I've grown up in the restaurant business. I've worked with a lot of people that are gay, and I've worked with a lot of people of color, black people, and all that. And I know black people will call each other racial slurs from "What's up, mom?" Blah blah blah. It happens. And they'll even say it in anger, "You one dumbass," And gay people are the same way. They'll call each other names, I mean, it's the same thing. So that part of the story, I believe, it could have very well been two black gay men from the same bar that he went to that rolled him because of this situation and called him those names. And boom, he just decided to throw in the MAGA country part to target Trump supporters and white people in general, because that's the implication there. Now, not only that, but there was also an old tweet that was dug up from him. I don't remember how old it was, but I saw it myself, where he's talking about Trump's one bitch ass N-word and blah blah blah. So he's a Trump hater to throw it on top of all of that. So it's amazing. And once again, 1 week after this whole incident with Covington, where everybody went off out of their minds over it, I see Ana Navarro posting about it on Twitter, and I'm like, you may want to walk this one back and kind of wait and see a little bit more of this story before you go off and go crazy. And everybody went crazy anyway. I mean, oh, poor Jesse. Oh, it's just so full of it, so full of it. But whatever. So to finish off January, and I think this one kind of bleeds into the beginning of February, we have abortion being made legal in was it the state of Virginia, or actually the third trimester abortion legalized in the state of New York. And this is something that can be up until the day the baby's born, basically. Now, they say that it would entail dealing with the mother's health. Her health would have to be at risk, but they didn't specify physical health. They didn't specify it would have to be death or whatever. It's just, if her health depends on it. Now, I was never a big person on pro-life or pro-choice. I never liked abortion. I think abortion is a horrible thing. I think terminating the life of a baby in utero is a very horrible way to practice birth control. It's just immorally inside me. But I never realized just how bad it was until I started researching the subject and looking at when the baby develops its own heartbeat, and when does life truly begin. When, women will argue, well, it's my body, this is my health, it's my body, I can do with it what I want. Well, you're right, it is your body. And I think I think as it being your body, you should take better care of it and maybe not allow somebody to impregnate it that you're not really wanting to have a child with, or maybe you want to have a child with them, but it's not the time. Maybe you should practice, because the moment of conception is, well, when the sperm and the egg meet up, and boom, they create their own genetic code. So at that moment, that baby, that zygote, whatever they call it at that point, I'm no doctor, but that is no longer you. That is a separate thing. It might not feel anything at that point. It might not, whatever. And at that point, you have the day after pills and all that. Again, whatever. But it is a separate thing. It's no longer your body. And it's not and I've seen people, talk, well, it's a parasite growing inside of me. No, it's not a parasite growing inside of you. It's your child. It's your offspring. This is, it's just such a weird argument. It's hard to justify it in any way, shape, or form. But to go to the third trimester is just vile. I actually watched a video of an abortion occurring at birth, and that really sealed it for me. That was probably one of the most horrible things I've ever seen in my life. And I've seen some horrible stuff out there. I mean, I'm not one to shy away from these things, because to understand something, you need to experience it if you can, or observe it if you can, experience it or whatever, to gain the most knowledge. And when I watched that broke my heart. I'm not a father. I've never been a father, and I'll never be a father. I can't, I'm not going to have kids. I'm 48 years old, and I haven't had them now. I'm not going to have them, but it breaks my heart to know that somebody could do that to their own flesh and blood. I don't think I could do that. I mean, I don't care how bad things are. And I've talked with friends that had kids young. One of my neighbors yesterday and I were talking about what's going on. He's like, yeah, man. He goes, I got my wife pregnant a month after we met. She was pregnant. She moved in with me and blah, blah, blah. He goes, and we never discussed it. He goes, now I have a beautiful daughter. She's one of the most beautiful women in the world. I got a second one that's a pain in the ass, but it never occurred to us in either case to abort that child. He goes, I don't, he goes, it was rough, especially that first one, those first couple of years. He goes, it was rough. We really had to struggle, but, it paid off in the end. So I think the whole legalization of abortion and the normalization of it even more so has just, I don't know, it's decimated the moral fabric of this country in a lot of ways. So Virginia tried to pass the same thing. You got the government there, Ralph Northam, who talked about how the baby would be born, and we'd keep it comfortable while the doctor and the mother discussed its options. And I'm like, wow. So now you have a baby that was born and is viable and is living and breathing on its own, and you're going to let it die. That's not abortion, man. That's murder. That's murder. There's just, how do you justify it? I don't get how you justify that kind of thing, because you can't. That is stone cold murder. And it makes me wonder where the moral center of the Democratic Party, these people that support these things. That's my body. That's a child living outside of your body. You're going to sit there and discuss whether or not they can live or die. Are we going to move the bar then so that we give you a 7-day return policy like some stores do with some products? This is going to be up until they're 18 and they're on their own, because God forbid, I think we'd lose a lot of them in their teenage years. I know, that could be a bad thing. And then wait till we go to the other end of the spectrum. What about the elderly? Well, we can start looking. I mean, I already know we've got states that are approving or trying to approve euthanasia, or assisted suicides, so to speak. And it's heartbreaking. It really is. And I understand people are in pain sometimes. They're living horrible lives. I understand unplugging someone from a machine that's keeping them alive with no quality of life. I understand that because the nature of it, they would die without the machine. But to assist somebody in dying, and we're stretching that moral fabric really thin there. So I just don't get where all this is going. But it's been, and this is only February 2nd. This is all, within the last 33 days, 32 days. It's just been insane. Now, on top of all that, we had a government shutdown, the longest one in the history of the country, 32 days, I think it was altogether. And, yeah. But the funny thing is, everybody's, this is going to hurt the U.S. This is, the Democrats. We had, I think, 300,000 plus new jobs created during that government shutdown. And even though the government was shut down for 30 some odd days, I don't know, did you notice? I didn't really notice. I mean, yeah, it might be a little late getting taxes back. Yeah, there might be this and that going on, a little harder to get a passport or something like that. But for the most part, nothing went really wrong. Makes you wonder, is it really that necessary to keep all these guys working all the time? Maybe we can get some of these agencies and get rid of them. Maybe we can send some back to the private spectrum. I don't know. But in any case, this is our first video on the channel, my first video on the channel. I'd like to welcome y'all. I also do Powers Podcast. You can go check them out on the YouTube channel. I'm Captain Beefy. You can find me on Twitter. I am out there up to my elbows fighting every day. At Powers Podcast is the handle for it there. Captain Beefy is the name. Feel free to comment, like, and subscribe. Hit that bell for notifications. And, look me up on Twitter. We'll have fun out there. I love fighting a good fight. And I'll see you again next time. I'm hoping to do more of these on a more regular basis. All right, everybody? Peace out.